As we know, the motorcycle is one of the most common vehicles used, and in order to keep the user safe from any danger, each piece must be manufactured considering material properties and manufacturing processes. In this case, we will talk about the sheet metal power, and in this case we choose three parts to analyze: the battery box, the fender, and the gas tank.
The first part of the motorcycle that we are going to talk about is the fender. The principal purpose of the fender is to prevent sand, mud, rocks, liquids, and other road spray from being thrown into the wheel. This part of the motorcycle is made from aluminum because it needs to be light, strong, flexible, malleable, a good conductor of heat, and have high corrosion resistance. All of these qualities are required for the elaboration of the part. In order to make this part, it's necessary to use the next processes: annealing. This process makes the aluminum soft by applying heat to the sheet metal, so it's more easy to manipulate. Shrinking process. This part is to give to the aluminum the shape that is needed. First, it's necessary to shrink the outside edge to create the curve. You can also achieve the same results using a stump or a leather bag. Stretching process. The stretching process begins with hammering into a leather sack using a blocking hammer. In order to create a nice arc, it is necessary to hammer in the center of the piece. The metal stretches on the inside while shrinking on the outside. Planishing. This is to take out the highs and lows left from the shrinking and stretching processes by feeding the fender through a planishing wheel. When purchasing the aluminum, we need to take into consideration some principal characteristics like corrosion resistance, malleability, strength, and fatigue resistance. It is well known that aluminum is a lightweight material, but there are different types of aluminum alloys that are categorized depending on the alloy, and each one has different qualities for different applications. In the next two tables, you can see different types of aluminum alloys and their respective characteristics and applications. For the elaboration of the fender, the best two options are the alloy 2024 or the alloy 6061. The cost of the alloy 2024 ranges from $3.88 to $4.95 per kilogram. For the alloy 6061, the cost ranges from $3.19 to $4.15 per kilogram. Each alloy reacts differently to certain welding processes. The most common ones that are used in the automotive industry for the aluminum are resistance spot welding and arc welding. In the next table, you can see some benefits of each one and some drawbacks. It is possible to apply some heat treatment processes to the alloy 2024 and alloy 6061 to achieve some mechanical properties. In the case of the alloy 2024, the best option is to use T6 heat treatment, that is a two-phase process that can increase the strength of the alloy by as much as 30%. First, it is necessary to heat the metal at 494 degrees Celsius and quench the metal in water, followed by reducing the heat until 191 degrees Celsius for 10 hours. For the alloy 6061, we can use T4 heat treatment to accomplish the strengthening. This is also known as artificial aging. The T4 condition is obtained at 494 degrees Celsius, followed by a cold water quench, and later on letting the metal sit at room temperature to obtain the properties of artificial aging.
The next chosen part is the battery box. An ideal structure for a battery box consists of aluminum for its high thermal conductivity and carbon fiber reinforced plastic for its lightweight and its high strength. We can produce CFRP structure and embed aluminum at areas where high thermal conductivity is required, specifically areas in contact with the electronics battery or batteries. This ensures we have the right materials in the right place. This allows us to obtain the best properties of both materials, as we can see in the graph, because we need a high thermal conductivity in order that the heat is dissipated and the box doesn't get too hot. Also, we've found a table about the properties of aluminum alloy and carbon fiber and epoxy. But we found that the average cost of non-space aerospace grade of the carbon fiber is around $21.5 per kilogram, while aluminum costs just $2.34 per kilogram. Due to the great difference in price, maybe it is convenient only to work with aluminum, even if we lose some properties. And for the creation of battery box, some processes are required, since the use of an aluminum sheet is proposed and this needs to be adjusted, so an electrical sheet can be used at various times. Initially, to get the exact measurement of the box, plus these pieces needs to be cut to fit the corners. In the same way, it is important to mention that the use of a metal brake is necessary, since it is necessary to bend the pieces and form the box. In the same way, the creation of the tabs is needed, and it is important to mention that a punching process is needed to create some holes. In addition, we can have different features to have a good quality material. Refer to a structural aluminum. O-Temper 6061 aluminum is the most versatile of the heat-treatable aluminum alloys and an excellent choice for its mechanical properties and corrosion resistance. Also, we found a table with the grain size of the aluminum, but maybe it is not extremely important for this application. And it is important to be careful with the state of the surface for this component, because it saves the motorcycle battery. So cracks should be avoided and corrosion should be avoided in the same way. And in the case of the edge condition, we need to adjust the borders with the above mentioned methods in order to create a proper box to fit the battery. To create the box properly, there is the option to weld the sides, and there are several methods involved. Gas tungsten arc welding is one of the most popular options, which requires a constant current equipment with alternating current capabilities using 100% argon as a shielding gas. This process is also very clean, as the AC cleans the oxidized layer of the aluminum and its welds. And we have more details in the table. Well, and we have the gas metal arc welding. That is another common method using for aluminum welding. This type of welding typically has a faster travel speeds and higher deposition rates than TAG welding, affecting the weld quality. However, it does utilize a mechanical wire feeding system, which means the welder may have the use of a spool gun or push-pull gun to make wire feeding possible. Also, we have more characteristics in the table. And finally, it is important to mention that heat treatment processes for aluminum are precision processes. They must be carried out in furnaces properly designed and built to provide the thermal conditions required. The general types of heat treatments applied to aluminum and its alloys are described in the video.
The last part is the gas tank. The gas tank of every vehicle is subject to the highest safety regulations. Strict statutory standards apply to both the gas tank and the materials from which it is made, requiring all components to pass extensive testing and inspection scenarios prior to serious tank production. There are primarily two types of gas tanks for motorcycles. One, fabricated from aluminum, and second, fabricated from steel. The gas tanks, regardless of what material they are made out of, are typically formed or stamped and then welded together. Different approaches are used depending on a particular motorcycle chassis that the tank will be fitted to. The price for steel sheets can have some variations depending on the thickness and metal quality, as we can see on the next slide. The strip edge must be sharp and must be handled carefully, using gloves to avoid injuries. Some of the characteristics of the sheet steel is that it needs to have a 16 to 18 gauge. This is relatively heavy steel, but it is preferred because of its strength. Even though gas tanks made of 16 gauge steel are heavier than gas tanks made out of either aluminum or 18 gauge steel, the strength factor, along with the attendant safety factor, more than overcome the weight disadvantage. A method of forming a gas tank includes forming two halves and welding the halves together. Two types of welds are used: tack welds for holding the complete welds after different steps have been taken to the tack weld elements or parts, and stitch welds to complete the welding of the two halves. Reinforcement is added where necessary. Double tanks for both gasoline and oil are also fabricated of essentially the same method steps. All of the welds are then ground down as desired, and then finished unit is pressure tested. If the pressure test is successful, the gas tank is considered finished and is then ready for shipment, painting, and installation on a motorcycle. Now, analyzing the different welding processes, when it comes to a motorcycle welding, many in the motorcycle field may tell you that a TIG welder is better than a MIG welder. While a TIG welder does allow for more control, the MIG welder will give you a stronger weld that will be able to withstand the stress and strain. The only worry you need to take into account for when using the MIG welder is that the weld doesn't crack. Even though the weld is strong, it can be susceptible to welding slag. A reason why MIG welding is not generally used on the bike frame or gas tank of the motorcycles. It is important to mention that the heat treatment processes for aluminum and steel are precision processes. They must be carried out in furnaces properly designed and built so they can pass the test and they can provide the thermal conditions required to keep safe the user that buys the motorcycle.